This is deliveranceministry.fm VideoCast number 72.
Hello, all of our podcast listeners. We'd like to welcome you to this episode of deliveranceministry.fm. We're going to give you some insights about the demonic realm and, of course, about our deliverance ministry here at Above and Beyond so that you can wage spiritual warfare more effectively. So today, I'd like to introduce, for the first time, my partner, Don Ibbotson. Usually Don's the one interesting saying hello to me.
We're switching it up here. Just trying something different, just to give it a new flavor, new look and feel.
A new sound, yeah. Is it good to be here, Don?
It's good to be, it's good to be in the co-pilot seat here. I really actually think I like this.
Oh boy. Get ready, guys. Well, today we're going to talk about dealing with the aftermath of adultery. I think that's something that Don and I see walk in the office frequently with couples, and it's a sad thing, but it's part of the world that we live in today. And, there's a lot to the process of repairing and rebuilding and regrouping as a couple. But we want to take a look today at some of the specific suggestions for individuals. And we're going to look at it from the wronged spouse's perspective and the unfaithful spouse's perspective. So we can take a unilateral look to help rebuild the marriage. So this is, we want to talk about this a little bit. We want to support the notion that spouses can work this out. Adultery is not a deal breaker. It's not something that comes in and then, it's the end of the marriage covenant. The marriage covenant is broken, but God is faithful. We've seen lots and lots of marriages that really work towards putting Jesus in front of them and heal it and bring it back together for a covenant that is honoring of God. When God is faithful, he said he could take us from a dry and barren wasteland and put us in that land of fruitfulness. And so I think, no matter how dead a situation looks or how awful it looks or how far gone it looks, that it's an impossible, nothing is impossible with God.
Well, and that's it. And I think, like you say, what we look for when couples come in is, do they both want to work it,
Mm-hmm.
and then, they're not always in the same place. Some are not sure, and some are gung ho. Many times, of course, it's the one who was unfaithful. They're the one many times who does want to make it go, and the wronged one is unsure, quite frankly.
Right,
or maybe
exactly.
They've been wronged and they're not sure. And I think your point is important. That we obviously people go through that. There's a lot to get things back on the track. A lot of times. I mean, we do deliverance for folks, and we're a believer in deliverance ministry to help people get rid of their get individual strongholds and whatnot. And we always encourage people. Sometimes we minister to people who are in the middle of a divorce or in the middle of something traumatic. I say, usually, from my perspective, it's just usually better. It's tough to get and sustain much lasting freedom when you're in the middle
There's too much trauma that's going on still, unfolding, right?
Yeah, it's just hard. It's just hard to do that. And so, but many times in the case of adultery, the adultery's been exposed. Sometimes the people are just in here after a week after they've found out. Sometimes it's a little bit longer. The wounds can still be pretty fresh, but what you look for is somebody who's willing to make the investment and the effort to hopefully rebuild the things. And many times marriage has got people got a big investment in a marriage. I mean, not just financial resources. You got kids, they got years, they got everything. Mm-hmm. And so you're really hopeful that there's some desire for it to be restored. And there's, like you say, there's a couples side of it that needs to happen. Couples, it can be deliverance, couples counseling. But I think what you said, and just to emphasize, we're going to focus today on specific suggestions that the individuals can take. And the good news is sometimes people will come in for counseling and their other partner is not willing to come, so some of these can still be beneficial, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So today we want to take a look at that. We want to look at some of the steps that we can take for the different types of spouses. And what they've gone through. So the first one we want to take a look at were the steps for the unfaithful spouse, the one that stepped out of the marriage and did have the affair. So, right? You want to kind of go over that?
That's a good place. That's a good place to start. And just as a quick aside, we are fans of the notion that the view that it's best typically for individuals to confess the adultery to their partner. Many times the partner finds out, but I know there's different views on this, and but I guess we're the view that the darkness gets, is there, and darkness gets bought in the light. Because usually when people keep things hidden, even for some period of time, man, there's bad fruit that comes from that.
Mm-hmm.
There's depression, there's guilt, there's shame, and it's just, there's a lot of things that can impact the marriage. So let's, presuming that the news is out, it's not new news or real new news, and say, well, what can we begin to tell the unfaithful spouses some of the things they need to be doing, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, of course, the first thing would be pretty obvious, though. Don't you think they should agree to stop the affair? That would be like the first thing. I think with repentance, that's the key. Like I think you said, that you want to look for that in a person, right? Is you want to see that they have a heart to repent and to step away from the actual affair itself. So they're going to have to agree to sever all contact.
Yeah, textbook, Facebook. Of course, Facebook is a benign institution almost now, but it can be good for, it can be good or bad. But boy, there's people that have connections on, text messages and Facebook and some of these other social media things out there. So obviously it goes without saying, but you almost need to say it, that it's like, man, you need to just cut that off.
Right. And, and a lot of that too, you'd almost need to take the person out of your cell phone.
Yes.
Delete them as a contact. All of that, because those, we talk a lot about soul ties, but anything that keeps that bond or that knitting together is gonna keep that door open. Like it's almost like a ashtray that's on your desk with a lit cigarette in it. If you just don't want to have that ability to connect with that person that quickly on the computer or over the phone. So you want to sever all contact, and then that takes away the secrecy. And it does create a sense of safety for the betrayed spouse. I think if they can see that you're stopping it, stopping an affair and surviving infidelity goes beyond no dinner dates or sex. It means nothing, no in-person visits, no, I just have to end this, or I have to get closure on this, or I need to make sure they understand it. I mean, you'll hear, the enemy will rationalize with people and try to get them to think that, just one more, just to make it nice. No, it needs to stop. And if you work with a person whom you've had an affair, those, you're going to have to, either you're going to leave that job, or you're going to keep it strictly businesslike. And then reveal to your spouse everything that happens. I think, also, with that, there would be no one-on-one meeting for lunch dates or getting behind closed door meetings. It's, very important to report any chance meetings with your former lover to your spouse before he or she finds out about it. So also you want to talk about your conversation. If your former lover contacts you, you need to announce that too. So, the key with all this is the trust. And I think that's what's been broken in the marriage. And that's the foundational piece. That's the part that has to be healed. You see that them come in, everything that's built on top of that after trust is shaky. So first and foremost trust, and repouring that foundation, and your openness and your accessibility with all of that's going to speak volumes to your spouse. Right?
Absolutely. Second thing is the issue of questions. People sometimes the spouse who's wronged might have questions about what happened, what went on. And, I guess we're with the view that if you were, the person who was unfaithful, that you need to be prepared for a season to answer any and all questions. Okay. Some people think, well, if I go over the details, it's going to make things worse. But no, typically, at least in that initial session for a period of time, it's better for the spouse, the wrong spouse, to ask any questions that they have, and the one who, the unfaithful one, to answer them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think because there's an accountability with that. You'll see a lot of couples come in and the husband will say, well, I've already told her everything. I've told her once. I'm not going to tell her anymore. And I'm like, no, that is just not how this works. Like you said, there is a season where you can repeat yourself several times for the confidence of your wife. She needs to hear about it. She needs to know you're being open about it. And I also think that there's an accountability. This is the sin of this. This is your sin, and you're going to have to face some of the consequences. It doesn't just it's not a one and done where you're just going to say, I've had some people come in like that where they've said, I've shared once and that's it. I'm like, I don't know. I mean, like if that was the fallout of all sin and you could control it, that would be that's one thing, but that's not how it works. So you have to face it head on and do answer all those questions, right?
Absolutely.
And then, show your spouse that empathy, no matter what. I think, the best indication of whether the relationship is going to survive the infidelity is how much empathy the unfaithful partner shows. I think that's absolutely true. When the betrayed spouse gets emotional about the pain caused by the affair, there's got to be, that empathy has to rise to the table and come to the plate. I mean, that you can't just do that. Well, shut off your emotions and don't think about it. I mean, you have to, there's a caring there. There's got to be a sensitivity.
You can
there.
relate and just connect. Say, I'm sorry. I know I did that. I know it was hurtful to you. I'm sorry. I wish I hadn't done that. But yeah, they've got to let that person be able to, to get those emotions and get that out and not shut it off. Because, like I say, sometimes people can have the mindset, well, it's done, it's finished, let's move on. But it's like, no, being able to listen and show your spouse empathy is going to be important, because that's going to be part of their healing process. And yeah, it may not be fun, but it's I think it's a necessary part of the healing process to show some empathy and supernatural patience and grace, obviously, to extend to that person, because they're going to need that to be able to know that that you understand the pain that you cause and have that empathy for it and what the disruption that was in the family and the relationship.
Right. Number 4, it says keep talking and keep listening, no matter how long it takes. Now, I think that we kind of went over this about answering all questions, but I think that you have to have a listening ear. You're going to have to build up a good reserve of love, because you're going to get asked a lot of questions, and you don't want to be resentful about that. You're going to have to leave yourself open to those questions. I think it's if you can do that without anger or blame, that's going to be the key for surviving that infidelity. Otherwise, if you're shutting them down and cutting them off, but again, I think there is a start and a stop time for that. I don't think that you should be persecuted for years and years and years over the infidelity. I think that's where the counseling is going to come in. There has to be a time where there's a disclosure time, and then some healing time through deliverance would be a good way to do that. But it's not going to be like a forever punishment.
Well, and forever bringing things up, because the demonic realm activity in this will keep stirring up memories of the past, and they'll want to know, well, what about this and what about that? And at some point, it's just not It's just not helpful. No. It's not helpful to anybody. And in that season, maybe it's elected to put solid time frames on it, but it could be weeks, it could be a few months. I mean, I don't know. There's some sort of a time frame. Say, okay, enough is enough. I don't need to know. I don't want to know anymore. And when these thoughts come up about knowing more, getting more information, it's probably the devil's at work trying to stir things up and keep you from the healing. That needs to happen. And so, yes, you need to listen. Give it a couple, and answering questions is different than listening to the person talk about the pain that's in them. And I think there is a measure of that there's a good season to be able to share, because that person needs somebody who is wrong, needs somebody to share with. And it needs to, obviously one of those needs to be the one who did the damage. So keep listening and keep talking. I think that's an important thing too. It's just, I think that's an important thing. Just keep listening and keep talking, and being able to connect on that emotional level with the person. That's important as well. But you're right. I agree. It can't be an open-ended, questions. At some point, I think that's a counseling issue, that the person who is wronged just needs to say, no, that's it. I don't, that's it. It's that's in the past. What happened? We talk about forgiveness and all these other things going forward. Just recognizing, because the devils will come back. When they come back, they're going to try to stir up memories and get your imagination and thoughts going. And it's just, at some point, it's just not a good place to go.
Yeah, no, they'll sabotage any chance you have of building the relationship back. I think the 5th one is taking responsibility. When we talk genuine sorrow and remorse, I think the worst thing that can happen is when when the unfaithful spouse begins to rationalize
or blame.
Yeah, well, I did this because, they haven't been intimate with me, or I've had to take up my mind somewhere else because I've not gotten any attention from my wife, or she's not sexually interested in intimacy and things like that. I think, those are all problems that definitely need to be worked on, but you can't blame your actions on that. I mean, you're accountable for
And I
your
think
the
in
sin
the-
in your life.
Right. And then there's a fairness we're talking about. This goes both ways. I mean, we've had people in here, we're talking about wives and husbands. I mean, there's husbands who
Sure.
have their wives have gone out and done the things too. So
Absolutely.
we don't want this to
No,
feel
no,
like
no.
it's totally
Sorry.
No, that's your perspective, totally one-sided, because it does go both ways.
Yes.
And so, that's the key. General sorrow and repentance. And, repentance is just basically turning back towards God,
Right.
and hopefully if you're in for Christian counseling, and couples may be at different places with the Lord, we'll just work with them where they are. But repentance is like, no, I'm turning away from that, and so, and sorrow. Yeah. There's a difference between regret, getting sorry they got caught, and God and sorrow. And most people can pick up on the difference, and there is a difference.
Right.
And hopefully, if they really want a person to rebuild, the marriage to be restored, there's got to be more than just regret. Sorry, and once again, that's going to be an important, because even in the midst of, the promises in Scripture with the enemy, the devil's intent for evil and destruction, God can work it together for good. And there's lots of people with testimonies, like you said, who've gone through these affairs, and I've heard people say their marriage was stronger and better. They were, I want to say they're glad they went through it. Not that it was fun at the time, and not that we would say God wanted that for them, but their marriage was at a point where God was able to bring great good out of it. But it started with that breaking point of genuine sorrow and remorse. And sometimes that's what it takes. For people to get for people to get the revelation and the promises. God will meet us where we are, and we can bring great good out of what happened.
Mm-hmm. And then the last one is, don't expect a quick or easy forgiveness. It takes time to rebuild all that trust. I think, you've got to recognize that your partner's had some trauma, some pain. You're going to have to expect the tears. You're going to have to expect some anger. You're going to have to expect some rage. But it's just going to take time. Right.
Well, yeah, the whole process, and forgiveness. We teach can be a choice. They can choose to forgive, but they still need healing, make deliverance, and they need healing afterwards.
Right.
And being able to talk and get that out, that can definitely can be part of the healing process for sure. And then the trust, rebuilding the trust. I mean, that takes. I like to use the analogy of trust is like a brick wall. An affair can knock a brick wall, can destroy the trust in a moment, just like a car slamming into a brick wall. But you only rebuild that wall one brick at a time. And I think it's like it with trust. But once again, it just takes time. Once again, some of these are counseling issues with couples need counseling. But individually, a person, the one who's committed it was unfaithful, they just need to take a longer term perspective on this, and like we talked about, have the grace, being able to keep talking, show empathy, and accept that there's going to be a season of walking this out. Mm-hmm. So absolutely. So those are some of the major things, and not the only ones. Obviously, there's probably others as well, but those are kind of key things that we see that the spouse, the unfaithful spouse, things they can start to do to help. To really help get this thing moving along, right?
Right. So now we're going to go over the steps for the wronged spouse. And the first step would be really, it's okay to focus on yourself, to focus on doing things for you. Like when your spouse cheats on you, it can leave you feeling lonely and insecure and filled with self-doubt. But instead of allowing all the negative thoughts and the feelings to gain a foothold in your head, it's okay for you to go out and, stay connected certainly with your church group. Don't retract, don't isolate, stay in that good, encouraging group. But also, it's okay to do a few things for yourself, like go to a spa or get a facial. I love going with your wife. Her and I go together all the time when we get stuff like that together. But, it's okay. Figure out what activities are going to make you feel better, things that you like. Or maybe it's a new class or some new activity or a new Bible study or, whatever it's going to be. But, all of that. And then, taking care of yourself is going to include, that you're not just sitting at home in a dark room with a box of chocolates eating junk food. I mean, you're going to have to get out and stay eating healthy and get enough exercise and energy so that you're not in that place of isolation. Because one of the biggest things that the enemy is going to try to do is bring in a darkness, a sadness, something that's going to try to sit on you, like with heaviness, a spirit of heaviness, and you almost can feel it. It's like it's weighing on you. That's a sure spiritual sign that if you're not taking care of yourself, that those spirits are going to come in and put their weight on you, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's, there's just an element of, yes, you need counseling and you need things, maybe if you got kids or other dynamic in the thing, that's going to complicate it a little bit. But I think it's for this season. It's like being wise and just in the season, focus on you and in the need for God to bring, for deliverance, for healing and restoration. And so it's not a selfish thing. It's, sometimes you want to be accused of being selfish, but I think, to the extent you can, it's just a time to pull back, be with the Lord, and also, just in this season, say, no, I really, I need to do the right things, body, soul, and spirit for myself.
And then the second step would be accept your emotions. Don't try to run away from them. There's a lot that's going on that's probably been stirred up and unearthed with all of this. When you first learn about your spouse's affair, lots of negative things and heart-wrenching emotions are going to try to come up. I don't want you to try to stuff them down or run away from them, but rather just allow them to, flow freely. The thing is, not for long seasons of anger and rage and that sort of thing. But I think that there's a process of you're going to be walking through several emotions that are going to, there's a path of normalcy that these things are going to work themselves out if you go ahead and walk through it. But trying to ignore them or pretend that they're not there or you're too strong to address them, that's just not going to help. Would you agree?
No, I agree. And it's, sometimes we just want to discount our emotions or stuff, like you use the word stuff our emotions. Emotions are, they're the thing we teach you can't trust them, but we do have emotions. And over time, our emotions hopefully will flow out of right thinking, but when something's raw and fresh, hurt and wounded, we need deliverance, we need healing, all those things, they just are. So not trying to deny them or like you say, run away from them. But recognize and say, no, Lord, help me. I want this season. I want to get through this season. That's part of it. It should be a season. And that's why hopefully, those who are stronger in the Lord and know more of the Lord and doing some of these other things that connected with the right people can help kind of get the train back on the tracks,
right,
maybe a little bit quicker, and also get themselves in a position, like say through deliverance and inner healing, and also in the natural, getting some things in the counseling realm to help get the marriage back on track too. So there's a bunch of things that are happening simultaneously, but say emotions that this are, you should, it's, don't discount the emotions, don't ignore them, but don't run away from them. And it's just like, okay, you're in this season and it's okay. It's not okay forever. It's not okay for months and months and months, I don't believe, but it's, for a season. And then you hopefully got a game plan going forward and hopefully see the favor of the Lord and the grace of the Lord and the Lord moving in different ways to bring hope, right? God's a God of hope. And so, that's hopefully needs to be part of the mix, because you need to know God's in the middle of this. He knew it was all going to happen. He knew this was going to happen. He knew it was going to unfold like this. And it doesn't mean he wanted it, but he allowed it. And the promise that he has is if, he's going to bring good out of it. And quite frankly, for some people, it's a tipping point. These affairs and whatnot, they destroy marriages and people just give up and they walk away. But I think for many, it's like, no, I'm going to fight for this. I'm going to work. And it is a fight and it's a struggle. But if you have two willing partners, it definitely is doable. They say certain bones get broken, they grow back, they can be stronger than they were before. So that can happen in marriages. Now, some people had a poor marriage ahead of time, and they had the affair, and it's like you don't want the marriage back to where it was.
Yeah, you definitely
want it better, and God can do that too. He can build. That's what the couples I mentioned who were almost, I want to say, almost glad. I've heard those words. They went through it because their marriage wasn't back to where it was. It was much better. It wasn't totally healthy before. That's how the affairs happen.
Right.
But through revelation and the healing and the work and the power of God, it was better. It was better than it was, and that's the goodness of God. And and working to bring good out of what the enemy intended for evil. But sometimes when you're in the middle of that, it takes faith to receive that and believe that. But that's what people who know more of the Word and need to draw from and have healthy, Spirit-filled, Bible-believing people around them can get themselves in, I believe, into a position of healing and growth quicker than those who are isolated. But the emotions, hey, they're there. Don't stuff them, don't deny them. But it's a season you're going to pass through.
I also think, too, that, from a clear perspective, not every couple that goes through an adulterous relationship is going to have two willing partners come in that want to work it out and make it work. But then for the one that does come in and does submit themselves to the process of getting help for themselves and doing all the things that we're talking about, individually, that person can end up in a better place as well. I've seen a woman come in where the husband had no interest in reconciling and was still running off with the other woman. And I got to tell you, it was so phenomenal how she subjected herself to everything that we're talking about today. And she did end up in a better place. I mean, bitterness did not get her. It did not infiltrate her. She was able to release the judgment, look at it from a perspective of it being demons and stuff that came in to divide and actually divide a whole church in its wake. And but she saw it. She looked at it from the outside, from a spiritual perspective of demonic activity, and that she could either go under the bus and be trampled by her spouse's bad behavior, or she could rise up and say, no, I'm not going to be collateral damage to this. And she did end up in a better place. So either the marriage can end up in a better place, or individually you can end up in a better place. But, God, that's it with God. If you're going to subject yourself to Him, He's going to put you in that place. He definitely is. And I've seen it over and over again. So either way.
Well, and then that's part of the counseling process to realize, hey, God's will is for this, but the other person's got a free will. Having the pieces they go through it so that the focus is on you, taking care of you. And that, yes, I think that can be huge. Like you say, too many people try to put too much on their plate and, try to get caught up in everything that the other person's going on in their life. And it's just generally not a healthy place to be. So, that's important for sure. Yeah.
So as we regress a little bit, step 3 would be to compile a list of questions once or twice. And then this says, be done with it. Now, we do know that there has to be an open season of that other person being accountable to your questions. But I would say, try to get as many of them out and have all the details that you need and ask those questions, be specific. Because, the one thing that the enemy will try to do is he loves to wrap around this with suspicion and sabotage and distrust and put one of the spouses in a place where they feel like they have to constantly be digging, watching. Those are all very evil things to just destroy it after all, because they make the one person very negative and bitter. And you can see, like with couples that come in, you'll see the one very repentant and he's willing to own his or her things. And then the other spouse comes in and they're a nervous wreck, following them in and out of the grocery store and on all their work assignments and having to look, just continually follow because of the suspicion. So you have to be on guard that suspicion spirit is going to try to get you to look and feel like you have to open up and read everything and check. But, get your questions, get them all put in one place, get them asked. I think also know that you are able to take a look at everything. Everything should be visible for you. The Facebook accounts, the phone accounts, everything. You shouldn't have to be suspicious and look. It should all be shown to you to help release a lot of that stress.
Right, and I guess the point I would emphasize when we talk about compiling a list of questions for a season is everything that happened, what that spouse did, who they were with, and things that they did, and that and once again, it could be over a course of you say 1 or 2 times. It could be the course of a month or 2 or a month or some weeks, or just it should be a short season. Where and at the end of it, you say, okay, that's it. I'm not going to ask any more questions, because these devils, when they come back, will prompt your memory and stir up your memory and remind you things. And when Paul says, forgetting what is behind. At some point, you get the questions asked that you wanted to ask, and you're going to get the answers, because we talked about the spouse who did who was the unfaithful one. They should be in a position to answer the questions, ideally. And so, but at some point you got to say, okay, that's it. That's all I want to know. I don't want to know anymore. And then be done with that. And it's at some point, it's just not going to be healthy for you. to keep going down that path. So get the questions, what the things you want to know, write them down, and then get it. You have a short season, hopefully get them out and then be done with it, because recognize that the enemy the demonic kingdom will want to keep that ball rolling indefinitely, and point saying, no, it's not helpful for me to know anymore. I know what I need to know. And hopefully that point is part of the process going forward. You've forgiven and dealt with all the other things going forward. But at some point, say, okay, that's it. That's good.
Yep. And I think the last two steps we kind of hit on, but I'll just bring them up anyway. So if you have anything you want to speak about on that. But the step 4 would be get Christian counseling, even if it's just for you. We talked about that a minute ago. It's going to help you see the big picture. It's going to help you not feel so trapped or hopeless. It's going to give you someone that you can have speak into your life, keep you uplifted. It's going to give you that time to rebuild. Hopefully a place where the two of you can come in together, and learn how to extend the grace and rebuild that trust. But it's going to be important, I do believe. And of course, from our perspective, we're going to look at it from a deliverance vantage point. Whereas if the spouses are both willing to go through deliverance, that's a place where the past then after that point stays in the past, and you really trust the faithfulness of God and the deliverance, so that you're not having to worry about those spirits of perversion that are still coming up and taunting you. I think when people get to our counseling rather than just Christian counseling, there's an element of peace that goes with that, because if the spouses are going to submit to the process, then that they're not going to go back out and reopen those doors, because they're not going to put themselves in a position of where the devils are going to come back, with more, right? 7 times more. So that's that Matthew 12:43 scripture. So yeah, I think deliverance counseling is a big piece. And then of course you're going to want to stay connected with people. We've talked about that too, right?
Yeah, you're going to stay, not being isolated, being hopefully in a good, healthy church. And if you need a support group of some kind that can help you, that's been through this, especially somebody who's been through this, that can be important. I mean, there's some unhealthy support groups where I think people just sit around and throw up on each other, and that's not healthy.
No,
but I mean, a support group important and not be isolated. And yeah, I think, on the counseling side of it, there's just so many elements to it. We talked about deliverance, but afterwards learning how to win the mind battles, when the thoughts come back, and keeping in bitterness, because these anger and bitterness will keep trying to come back upon you. And it's like, if you just cognizant of talks about in Ephesians 6 about our struggle is not against flesh and blood. Even adultery is in a spiritual battle. It's not a battle of flesh and blood. Your enemy isn't the other partner of your spouse. It's a spiritual devil, and a spiritual struggle. And that's what it is. It's a spiritual battle, and these devils are going to try to come back. And so being able to discern and resist these spirits, and then also, in the natural, walking out, like you say, learning how to rebuild trust, learning how to extend trust. If you're able to consciously forgetting what is behind and taking thoughts captive, then you're going to be in a better position, because the enemy is going to keep trying to get you focused on, suspicion and fear and everything going forward. And yes, we want to be wise as serpents, innocent as doves. And that's why I hope, the brick wall analogy, you'll see some good fruit. In the relationship and your spouse as you go forward, and you take that, you take the good, and you kind of build that and go forward in a process approach. And once again, it's predicated, hopefully, ideally, on the one who is unfaithful having the same heart and mind. So they're going to be wise and alert as well. But I think the point you mentioned is so good. Sometimes people are, you're in a relationship or in a situation where you don't know how the other person is going to respond and react. And it's like you can still focus on yourself, and you're building your relationship with the Lord and getting healed and walking through that. And is it easy? No, it's not. But, God's faithful, and He knows where you are. And so, and just, having Him in the midst of the fire as you're going through it is going to be an important process. But yeah, and, get help for yourself. I think that's big. People, if there's couples counseling, and that's great. They need that going forward. And staying connected with people, not being isolated. Those are really important.
Yeah.
So
that's good. So that's our podcast for today. Do you have anything else you'd like to add there, Don? Do you have any takeaways or anything?
No, just typically just to mention, just keep letting us know what you want to hear. We've talked before, different podcasts about the resources on the websites, the Academy website, counseling or training resources. We talk about our resource library, all sorts of handouts and podcasts, access to these YouTube videos as well. We're up on YouTube. So avail yourself of those. If you need help, we've got counselors now. We help people in Florida, but all over the world through using GoToMeeting. So if you know somebody who needs help, if you need help for any of these things, get in contact with us. I mean, it's the technology is such as you don't have to be here sitting face to face. We can help you wherever you are. If you're learn how to train in deliverance ministry, we can help you with that. And as I say, please let us know of any topics that come along that you might be interested in. So with that, we just want to thank you for listening, and we'll be back again with you real soon. Thank you for listening. God bless you.